They controlled the narrative until one truth slipped through and everything they built began to collapse. They were so sure of the story, every face nodded, every voice agreed. No one dared to question it because the lie felt safer than the truth. But all it took was one detail, one quiet, undeniable piece of truth that shattered everything they thought they knew. This isn't just a story about deception. It's about the silence that protects it and the moment that silence breaks. Because in the end, the truth doesn't need an army, it only needs time and someone who refuses to look away. They all believed it, every single one of them, not because it was true, not because it was proven, but because it sounded good. It felt good. It fit their version of the world, so they accepted it without thinking. That's how easy it is to sell a lie. Wrap it in a good story, lace it with a little emotion, sprinkle in just enough fear, and no one asks questions. No one checks the facts. They're too busy being entertained by the narrative. You see, the truth isn't attractive. It's not convenient. It doesn't cater to comfort zones. The truth demands effort. It makes people uncomfortable. That's why they avoid it. That's why most people never look past the surface. They'll quote headlines, repost opinions, repeat whatever the loudest voice is saying. They'll treat fiction like fact if it means they don't have to confront something real. The lie, it thrives on that laziness. It doesn't need evidence. It just needs enough people to echo it. Once the lie gains momentum, it becomes the version of reality everyone agrees to pretend is real. And anyone who questions it becomes a problem. They get labeled, mocked, isolated, not because they're wrong, but because they threaten the illusion. That's what happened here. They created a version of events that made them feel powerful. They needed a villain, so they made one. They needed a hero, so they invented one. They didn't care what was actually true. They cared what made them feel right. And most people, they nodded along, not because they believed it deep down, but because they were afraid to be the one who didn't. That's how easily the masses can be manipulated, not through force, but through a story, a well-placed narrative turns cowards into parrots. It silences the few who know better, and it keeps the truth buried under the weight of popular opinion. But here's the part they didn't count on. They never thought someone would look closer. They never expected someone to question the script, because the world taught them that the loudest story wins, not the truest one. But some people, some of us, don't move with the crowd. Some of us are wired to see what others ignore. Some of us were born with the curse of clarity, and once you see it, once you realize the story isn't real, there's no going back. That's when everything shifts. That's when the cracks begin to show, because no matter how carefully they built the lie, one detail always slips through, just one inconsistency, one slip-up, one thing that doesn't add up. And once you spot it, once you say it out loud, everything starts unraveling. The story collapses under its own weight, and the silence that follows is louder than anything they ever said. It doesn't take a grand reveal. It doesn't take a viral moment. Just one quiet truth placed in the right moment can break everything they built. That's the power of awareness. That's the danger of someone who refuses to look away. The world isn't built on truth. It's built on perception, and if you control perception, you control behavior. That's why they fight so hard to keep the lie alive, because the moment people wake up, the control is gone, and most people, they're not ready for that responsibility. They'd rather stay asleep, blaming others, believing stories, following the crowd, because waking up means seeing everything you ignored. It means admitting you were part of the silence. But if you're the one who sees it, if you're the one who dares to speak when silence is expected, then understand this: they will hate you before they ever thank you. They will resist you before they respect you. Because the truth costs people their illusions, and illusions are all some people have. Still, say it anyway, speak it anyway, because the lie only wins when no one's watching. The moment one person sees it clearly, the illusion loses its grip. And once that happens, once that single thread is pulled, everything begins to fall apart. They lied and the world ate it up, but now they're choking on the detail they forgot to bury: reputation. That word sounds clean, doesn't it? Polished, respected, untouchable, but most reputations aren't built on truth. They're built on performance, carefully arranged moments, selective silence, the right smiles in the right rooms. The illusion is crafted, not earned. It's rehearsed, marketed, protected like it's sacred, and the world eats it up because it looks good on the outside. But what's real, that lives somewhere else, that lives in silence, where no one's looking. People build reputations the same way they build masks. They figure out what the world rewards, and they shape themselves to match. They become what's praised. They become what sells, and after a while, they forget who they really are underneath it all. But it doesn't matter to them, because the applause keeps coming, the validation never stops, and as long as they're clapping, why bother being honest? That's how the illusion survives. It's not that people believe in someone's greatness, it's that they want to. They want the story. They want to believe someone can rise without flaw, lead without compromise, exist without shadows. But real power doesn't exist without darkness. Real strength doesn't come without struggle. And real people, they bleed just like you do. But here's the part most people ignore. The illusion can't last forever. It's fragile. It's maintained through silence, other people's silence. The silence of the ones who see through it but stay quiet. The silence of the ones who know better but play along, and eventually someone who's been watching stops clapping. They stop playing along, they start to ask questions, and when that happens, the illusion starts cracking. Exposure doesn't come with fireworks, it doesn't show up screaming, it moves in shadows, it watches, it waits, it listens for the moments when the mask slips, and it always does, because no one can play a character forever. Sooner or later, the cracks show, and when they do, the truth doesn't need to yell. It just needs to exist, because when someone sees the truth, really sees it, the illusion loses its power. You can't be fooled by something you've already unmasked. You can't be impressed by someone you've seen lie to themselves, and when that exposure happens, it doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be undeniable. The funny thing is, most people think exposure is some kind of betrayal. But it's not. Exposure is justice without noise. It's truth showing up without warning. The illusion collapses, and there's no one to save it. Not because someone attacked it, but because it never had a foundation to begin with. And this is where it gets real. If you've ever been the one to watch someone build their reputation on lies, you know what silence feels like. You know what it's like to see the truth and say nothing. At first, it feels like control, it feels like wisdom, but over time, it starts to burn. You start to realize you were helping the illusion survive, you were part of the protection, and when the silence gets heavy enough, it either breaks you or it sets you free. The ones who break the silence, those are the ones who shift everything, not with drama, not with accusations, just with presence, with clarity, with unshakable truth. They become the reason the illusion can't keep breathing. Because once someone stops pretending, the whole system gets nervous. That's why the world fears quiet observers, not because they're dangerous, but because they're honest, and nothing threatens illusion more than someone who sees it for what it is and refuses to look away. So when the applause dies down, when the lights go off, when the rooms get empty and the noise fades, what's left? That's when exposure happens, in silence, in stillness, when no one's watching. That's when the truth rises. You don't have to destroy the lie, you just have to stop protecting it. The lie didn't have to be smart, it didn't have to be convincing, it just had to be repeated enough times that no one dared to question it. That's the trick. That's how deception survives, not because it's hidden well, but because people stop looking. They hear it once, they hear it twice, they see others nodding, and that's all it takes. Agreement becomes truth. Not because it is truth, but because no one has the spine to challenge it. And that's where the lie finds its strength, in comfort, in safety, in the silence of a room full of people who know something doesn't add up, but decide it's easier to go along with it. Safer to stay quiet, because once you ask questions, once you show doubt, you become the problem, and nobody wants that smoke. Nobody wants to be the one that ruins the vibe, that breaks the illusion everyone's grown attached to. So they protect it, even when it's killing them inside. That's how it felt, safe, because safety doesn't come from truth in this world. It comes from belonging. It comes from fitting in. If the group accepts the lie, then agreeing with it makes you part of the group. It earns you peace. You get to walk through the day without being singled out, without having to explain yourself, and that's worth more to most people than truth ever was. They'd rather be accepted for agreeing with a lie than be attacked for standing in truth. So the lie sits there, untouched, unchallenged. It becomes part of the culture, part of the language, part of the way people see the world, and every day it goes unchecked, it grows stronger. Not because it's more believable, but because fewer people are willing to question it. And when no one questions the lie, it becomes law. The lie becomes the standard. It becomes the expectation. And then anyone who doesn't live by it starts looking crazy. They're the ones labeled as difficult, rebellious, or negative. But in reality, they're just not asleep. They're just awake enough to see what everyone else is pretending not to notice. That's the sickness of it. People will defend the very thing that's deceiving them just to avoid discomfort. Just to avoid change. That's how deeply rooted the lie becomes. People start needing it. They rely on it to keep their world simple, predictable, controlled, and the ones who see the lie for what it is. They learn fast, either keep your mouth shut or get ready for war, because the moment you raise your hand and say, "That doesn't make sense," you become a threat. You shake the peace they've built on falsehood, and they'll resent you for it. Not because you're wrong, but because you reminded them that they knew better and said nothing. But here's what the lie never plans for. It never expects someone to be willing to stand alone. It never expects someone to value truth more than acceptance. And when that person shows up, when someone walks into the room unafraid to speak the obvious, the air shifts, you feel it, the silence gets heavier, because deep down everybody knows. They just didn't want to be the first to say it. The lie loses its power the moment someone questions it without fear, not with shouting, not with drama, just with calm, relentless clarity. A single person willing to say, "That's not right," without flinching, forces everyone else to look at what they were ignoring. And in that moment, the illusion breaks, the safety dies, the comfort fades, because now there's a crack in the story, and once there's a crack, truth finds a way in. That's why they hated the silence breaker. Not because they were cruel or wrong, but because they made it impossible to keep pretending. They forced people to confront what they had agreed to out of fear. And when you confront the lie, when you stop playing along, you force everyone else to choose, either wake up or keep lying to themselves. The lie only felt safe because no one asked the right question until someone finally did. The truth is always the first thing they laugh at, not because it's funny, but because they're afraid of what it exposes. That laughter, that mockery, it's a defense mechanism. It's how weak minds protect their illusions, by ridiculing what threatens them. So they point, they joke, they twist it into something ridiculous, hoping if they make enough noise, the truth will go away. They don't argue with facts. They mock the person brave enough to speak them. They want you quiet, not because you're wrong, but because you're right, and deep down they know it. That's what eats at them. That's what fuels their reaction. The truth unsettles the fake. It disturbs the comfortable. It rattles the system built on pretense. So instead of facing it, they try to kill it with laughter, discredit it with sarcasm, strip it of its power with public shame. And when that doesn't work, they isolate the one who spoke it. Because when you speak truth in a world addicted to lies, you don't get applause. You get resistance. You get eyes rolling, doors closing, voices whispering behind your back, not because you failed, but because you reminded them of everything they've buried. You held up a mirror to the version of themselves they're desperate to avoid. They mock what they fear, they mock what they can't control, and nothing is more uncontrollable than a truth that doesn't flinch, a truth that doesn't need validation, a truth that stands even when it's outnumbered. And in the beginning, that truth does stand alone. You'll feel it. You'll walk into rooms where everyone smiles, but no one sees you. You'll speak and feel the temperature drop because your presence challenges their script. It makes people uncomfortable when someone refuses to play the game, when someone refuses to bow to the lie everyone else agreed to worship. But here's what they forget: mockery only lasts as long as denial does. You can laugh at the truth all you want, but time has no loyalty to falsehood. And when the dust settles, when the consequences show up, when reality comes knocking, the truth is still standing, quiet, unmoved, waiting, because truth doesn't beg to be believed. It doesn't fight for attention. It doesn't need a crowd. It waits and it watches, and over time it exposes everything that was built to hide it. One by one, the lies start to contradict themselves. One by one, the stories fall apart, and the same people who laughed the loudest, they go silent. That silence, that's the sound of the truth winning. No explosion, no celebration, just the steady collapse of everything that was fake. And when that moment comes, nobody wants to talk about the mockery. Nobody wants to admit they were part of it. They act like they knew all along. But you remember the smirks, the whispers, the names they called you just for seeing clearly. So if you're standing in truth right now and they're laughing, let them mock what they don't understand. Let them joke about what they're too scared to face, because that laughter is temporary. It's a smokescreen. It doesn't mean you're wrong. It means they feel threatened. And if you can outlast their noise, if you can endure the isolation, the resistance, the rejection, you'll watch them come full circle. You'll watch the truth rise from the ashes of their denial, and you won't have to say a word. You won't need to scream, "I told you so." The truth will say it for you. The ones who mocked it will fall quiet. The ones who watched will remember who stood alone. And the lie, no matter how loud it once was, won't have a leg left to stand on. They always mock the truth until it stands undefeated. They called it luck. They said it was a coincidence, a fluke, something that just happened to fall into place, because that's easier for them to accept. It makes them feel safe. It lets them off the hook. If it was luck, they don't have to ask why they didn't see it. If it was random, they don't have to admit they missed the truth that was right in front of them. But let's be clear. What exposed the lie wasn't luck. It was earned. It was paid for in silence, in pain, in patience, and in pressure. That one detail, the one that blew the lid off the illusion, that wasn't found by accident. It was discovered by someone who refused to stop watching, someone who didn't accept the story just because everyone else did, someone who was willing to be the outcast while the rest of the world nodded along. It wasn't random. It was the result of 1,000 moments of discipline, 1,000 moments of seeing through the noise and waiting for the moment the lie tripped over itself. People think the truth shows up like lightning, sudden and dramatic. But most of the time it doesn't. It shows up slow, quiet, piece by piece, and only the ones who never stop looking see it coming, the ones who study the inconsistencies, the ones who don't take people at their word, the ones who know that what's shown is often just a distraction from what's being hidden. The lie was built with care. It was rehearsed, crafted, protected by groupthink, by fear, by convenience. It was comfortable. It made people feel good, and when something feels good, people stop asking questions. That's how it stayed alive for so long, because people chose peace over truth. But there's always one who doesn't. There's always one who sees the slight hesitation, the misplaced sentence, the contradiction no one else notices, and they don't let it go. They don't push it aside. They file it away. They wait. They watch. They collect the pieces in silence until one day that one tiny detail doesn't match, and everything falls apart. That's not luck, that's mastery, that's discipline, that's someone who chose clarity over comfort. Someone who understood that the truth doesn't always shout, it whispers, and if you're not willing to suffer in the silence, you'll never hear it, because it hurts to see what others ignore. It costs something to stand still when everyone else is moving with the crowd. It breaks something in you when you have to hold the truth in your chest while the world celebrates a lie. But that's the price. That's what earns you the right to speak when the moment finally comes. That's what earns you the one detail that changes everything, and when it finally surfaces, when that one detail breaks through, it doesn't come with a parade, it comes with quiet clarity. You see the reaction. You feel the shift, the lie panics, the ones who protected it start to scatter, and for a moment the world looks to the one person who saw it all before they were ready to admit it, and that moment. That vindication, it's not revenge, it's not about being right, it's about knowing you didn't lose yourself in the madness, it's about knowing your discipline wasn't wasted, your silence wasn't weakness. Your patience wasn't cowardice, it was strategy, it was strength, it was survival, because when you see clearly in a world full of deception, the truth becomes your weapon, not a loud, chaotic one, but a precise one. And precision only comes from control, from training your mind not to react, not to chase, not to prove, just to see, just to wait, just to prepare that one detail, the one that broke the illusion. It didn't fall into someone's lap. It didn't show up for the ones playing pretend. It revealed itself to the one who refused to stop thinking, the one who earned it through clarity, through endurance, through complete emotional self-control. So let them say it was luck, let them pretend it just happened, but you and I both know the truth, that detail, it was earned. Control is never about force, not at first. It starts subtle, it starts with a lie. A small one, almost invisible, the kind that sounds good, the kind that makes you feel safe, accepted, part of something. It gives them power without needing to take it, because you hand it over willingly. You believe the story, you follow the script, and with every nod, with every time you bite your tongue, they grow stronger. That's how control works. It doesn't shout, it whispers, it makes you think you're choosing when really you're obeying. And you don't even realize it because the lie isn't sold with chains. It's sold with comfort, with inclusion, with the illusion of peace. But underneath it all, it's not about peace, it's about submission. It's about keeping you small, distracted, compliant. As long as the lie holds, so does their grip on you. They don't need to lock you in a cage if you've been convinced to stay inside one voluntarily. And most people do. Most people build the cage themselves, they decorate it, they defend it, because the lie told them that stepping outside would cost too much, that asking questions would get them punished, that being honest would mean being alone, and for most people that fear is enough. They trade their freedom for acceptance without even realizing it, but every lie has an expiration date, every performance has a slip. And the thing about control built on deception is that it only works if no one notices the cracks. Once someone sees through it, just one person, the structure starts to shake because the lie depends on unity. It depends on everyone playing along. One voice of dissent, one person who doesn't flinch can unravel the entire illusion, and when that lie breaks, their control goes with it, because the people who clung to the lie didn't build real influence. They built dependence. They made people need the lie, not respect the truth, and when the lie collapses, the fear loses its grip, the spell breaks, and suddenly everything they controlled, every silent agreement, every manipulated loyalty, starts slipping through their fingers. You see it in their eyes, the panic, the shift, the realization that their power wasn't real, it was borrowed. Borrowed from people who didn't know they had a choice. People who were never truly weak, just misled. And when the truth hits, when the illusion dissolves, the followers stop following, the room grows quiet, the fear disappears, and so does the control. That's the part they never prepare for. They spend so much energy protecting the lie, guarding it, silencing anyone who questions it, that they forget to build anything real, so when it breaks, they're left with nothing, no loyalty, no support. Just the wreckage of what they tried to dominate, and in that silence, the ones who used to be afraid remember who they are. The most dangerous thing you can ever do to someone who built their power on lies is remind people of the truth. Not loudly, not violently, just with presence, just with proof, just with undeniable clarity, because the moment people see reality again, they don't go back to pretending, they wake up, and once they're awake, they can't be controlled the same way ever again. That's why they try so hard to keep the lie alive. That's why they smear anyone who threatens it, because the lie is the leash, and if the lie dies, the leash breaks. The people they once silenced become voices. The people they once controlled become threats, and there's no strategy that can put that genie back in the bottle. You don't have to fight the people who built the illusion. You don't even have to convince the ones who believed it. All you have to do is stay clear, stay patient, and stay unshaken, because eventually the truth always gets its moment. It always finds the weakness in the lie, and when it breaks through, it doesn't just shatter the illusion, it frees every person who was trapped inside it. Once the lie breaks, so does their control, so now you see it. The lie wasn't just accepted, it was protected. By silence, by comfort, by fear, they laughed at the truth. They mocked the ones who saw too clearly. But they forgot one thing: control doesn't survive exposure. That one detail wasn't random. It was earned through discipline, through patience, through the pain of watching everything fake celebrated like it was real. They thought they were untouchable. They thought their story would last forever. But one crack is all it takes. One truth, standing alone and unshaken, is louder than 1,000 liars pretending to be right. And once the lie breaks, so does everything built on it. You don't have to scream. You don't have to convince them. Just stand still. Let time do what it always does: reveal, because in the end, truth doesn't beg for belief. It just waits, and when it arrives, it doesn't knock, it tears the door off the hinges. Thank you for listening. Until next time, watch closely and never stop seeing what they want you to miss.